this is Bobby, and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So there's been a lot of news reports when it comes to Gennady Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez this week. First, we heard that Oscar De La Hoya was negotiating, or Golden Boy, they were negotiating with Gennady Golovkin for a third fight. Then we heard Gennady Golovkin doesn't want the fight, according to Golden Boy's vice president, Eric Gomez. So we really don't know what's going on with negotiations for that fight. Eddie Hearn didn't have a whole lot to say on the matter, but he did admit that they had a meeting with Gennady Golovkin to possibly sign him to Dazn. My man Gustavo Neri, who works with me that I sent to the fight, he interviewed Eddie Hearn at the press conference, at Demetrius Andre's press conference, and asked him about the Golovkin situation. This is what he had to say.
What's the recent conversation between yourself and Triple G and his team in terms of...
We had a meeting. He met with everybody, as I understand it. I think it's undecided what he's going to do next. I think he'll make a decision soon. And I think that hopefully he comes to Dazn.
There you go. Lastly, I seen there was an interview, I don't know if you've seen it, with Richard Chafford. He was kind of like comparing, contrasting the way you model your shows in Sky Boxing, Swimmers pay-per-view. Over here, you're doing Dazn. Can you just explain to the casual and the hardcore fans why you do pay-per-view models over there, but
because
here...
it's $25 in the UK.
Okay.
And it's $80 or $100 in the US. It is a complete joke that US fight fans have to pay $80 or $100 for a pay-per-view. So when I come with a different attitude. Where
Eddie, speaking about splits, we see Canelo Alvarez. You have a fighter, Demetrius Andre, fighting on Friday. Canelo Alvarez is being rumored to face Triple G in a rematch. You know, Oscar De La Hoya came out and said that. How do you get Demetrius Andre or Danny Jacobs to get that fight with Canelo Alvarez?
Well, I think it's only a natural progression being on the same platform. So Dazn have the guys they want Canelo to box. That is Triple G, Danny Jacobs, Demetrius Andre.
In that order?
Yeah, I mean, but, you know, Golden Boy and Canelo will decide what order. You know, they are in control of an A-side fighter. And, you know, we're in a position right now where, with Danny Jacobs and Canelo, it's a bit like Joshua and Wilder. Danny Jacobs is a belt holder. Canelo is a unified champion. We accept that Canelo is the A-side. But we also accept that Danny Jacobs is a big star in US boxing and he's a world champion in his own right. What do you think we're going to do? Come out in that fight and say, we want 50-50. The fight will never happen. But we want respect. Just like Fury wants respect. Just like Wilder wants respect. And we feel like 60-40 in those instances are respect. But they obviously don't. So, you know, with Danny's earned more money in his time than Demetrius has. So maybe Demetrius... I don't think it's necessarily a case of a split in those times. It's probably a flat purse for both those guys. But, you know, we're in a market right now where there's a lot of platforms out there that would love to get Danny Jacobs on. Al Heyman, PBC, would love to get Danny Jacobs on their platform. So would Top Rank and ESPN. So we've got to provide a great opportunity for Danny Jacobs to move forward with us, and that would be to try and get the Canelo fight.
If Demetrius wins this fight on Friday and can't get the Canelo fight, could we look forward to seeing him possibly face Billy Joe Saunders?
Yeah, it's a fight. After this fight, this will be his last voluntary, so he'll have a mandatory. So it'd be interesting to see the WBO make mandatory. If it's Billy Joe, we welcome that fight with both hands.
Thank you,
Eddie, what is the deadline for Jacobs Canelo?
Nothing. Again, like what we say, May the 4th. So couple of weeks. I don't know. You know, I mean, I think that Golden Boy and Dazn and us will be looking to see who Canelo's next opponent is soon. But at the end of the day, it's not my decision. You know, Golden Boy and Canelo will decide who he fights next. So we hope that would be Danny Jacobs, and we're not out here begging. But we believe that Jacobs has earned the right for that fight. He had a great fight against Gennady Golovkin. He's a world champion in his own right. And hopefully Canelo Jacobs gets made.
What's the recent conversation between yourself and Triple G and his team in terms of...
We had a meeting. He met with everybody, as I understand it. I think it's undecided what he's going to do next. I think he'll make a decision soon. And I think that hopefully he comes to Dazn.
There you go. Lastly, I seen there was an interview, I don't know if you've seen it, with Richard Chafford. He was kind of like comparing, contrasting the way you model your shows in Sky Boxing, Swimmers pay-per-view. Over here, you're doing Dazn. Can you just explain to the casual and the hardcore fans why you do pay-per-view models over there, but here...
Because it's $25 in the UK.
Okay.
And it's $80 or $100 in the US. It is a complete joke that US fight fans have to pay $80 or $100 for a pay-per-view. So when I come with a different attitude where I can't come out and say, pay-per-view is dead, because I do pay-per-view in the UK.
Okay.
But it's $25. So I'll change, pay-per-view is dead at $80 or $100. Maybe it's not even dead. I just think US fight fans have got to wake up, because when you get Jacobs Canelo, or you get Jacobs Golovkin, or you get Wilder against AJ, it's going to be, you ain't even going to have to pay for it. It's going to be part of your subscription, $9.99 a month. So what happens if you get Jacobs Canelo, AJ against Wilder, and something else, 3 pay-per-view fights over 3 months? That's going to be costing you, should be costing you $240. You're paying $30 for it.
One of the criticisms they were saying is that with fighters on DAZN, they prevented them from being the status of like Floyd Mayweather, Canelo's, Pacquiao's of the world. If you had to make an argument,
Canelo's on DAZN.
No, but I'm saying like before when he pay-per-view, he was making good numbers. So my question to you is DAZN moving forward? I know there's always a game plan and outline. Do you feel like if Floyd, Canelo, Pacquiao, Oscar were in their prime on DAZN, do you think instead of them being millionaires, they'll be billionaires on DAZN and the long-term goal?
I don't know. The market's changed a lot since they've been out there.
So
what I will tell you is this: there was more people watching Canelo's fight against Rocky Fielding than will be watching Pacquiao Broner on Saturday night.
So you guys heard it from Eddie Hearn. Now, one thing I will say is I completely agree with Eddie Hearn when it comes to what he said about pay-per-view. It is ridiculous that while we're paying $70, $80, $90 for one pay-per-view, in the UK they're paying $20 for a pay-per-view. If we only had to pay $20 for a pay-per-view, it would not hurt us that much if we had back-to-back pay-per-view fights. But when it comes to DAZN, it's even better because you don't have to pay that additional pay-per-view. You don't have to pay that additional $20, or here in the States, $75, $80. At the end of the day, what those expensive pay-per-view fights do is it limits the sport. The only people you're attracting is die-hard boxing fans, as opposed to mainstream casual fans, because that's how we want the sport to be perceived. We want the sport of boxing to be like the NFL, the NBA, sports like that, because that's how boxing used to be looked at back in the day. So everything Eddie Hearn said right there, it made all the sense in the world. I completely agree with him. Now, as far as Gennady Golovkin meeting up with DAZN, yeah, right now we don't know who Golovkin is going to sign with. Frank Warren, he just recently said that he reached out to Golovkin and he's trying to revive a Golovkin versus Billy Joe Saunders fight. Then you have Eddie Hearn, who had reached out to Golovkin before. He wanted him to fight Caleb Smith at 168. And then you have Jamal Charlo, who the WBC ordered Golovkin to fight next, who obviously is with Al Heyman in the PBC series. Then you have Canelo Alvarez, who Golden Boy just reached out to Golovkin to try to set that fight up. So there's a lot of options for Gennady Golovkin, but unfortunately this is bad news for Triple G, because these options are not easy fights. None of these are Willie Monroe's, Marco Antonio Rubio's, Vanes Monterosi and David Lemieux type of opponents. These are real opponents, and I think the majority of these guys have a very, very good chance of beating Gennady Golovkin, and I feel even Golovkin sees it that way. So it's going to be really interesting to see which direction Golovkin goes, because like I told you guys before, there are no more easy fights for Gennady Golovkin. That doesn't mean he can't find an easy opponent. What it means is it would be almost impossible for him to justify taking on some easy opponent instead of fighting the likes of Jamal Charlo, Demetrius Andrade, Danny Jacobs, Canelo Alvarez, BJ Saunders, etc., etc. Let's see what Triple G decides to do. I'm sure we'll hear an announcement within the next 2 weeks. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.